Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for logging into this webinar about anthropology programs at the University of Birmingham. As you've just heard, my name is John Spall, and I am a teaching fellow in the Department of African Studies and Anthropology. I'm just going to talk to you a bit about our department, the kind of department that it is, about what anthropology is and our approach to teaching it, as well as the structure of some of the degrees that you can do if you choose to come to Birmingham. And I'll also say something about the non-academic aspect of what we can do for you while you're here, as well as the sort of careers it can lead into, that your degree could lead into after you're finished here. The Department of African Studies and Anthropology has been established for over 50 years. And so we have a lot of experience in terms of anthropological research and teaching at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. And we're quite a small department in the context of a broader university. And we think that this gives students the best of both worlds, in the sense that if you come here, you'll be part of quite a small and close-knit community of academics and students, where everybody knows each other's names, where you can expect to be taught in quite small groups and get quite a lot of quality contact time with lecturers. But at the same time, you're in the context of a large university, so there's quite a big range of option modules that you can take, which will allow you to tailor your degree to your particular interest. Now, whilst, of course, the ranking exercises of universities aren't the only way that you'll decide what university you're going to go to. As you can see from these 2 bullet points, we have done very well recently in terms of how our research is assessed nationally and internationally, and also our degrees are ranked very high throughout the UK in various university guides. Now, to tell you something about what anthropology is, I mean, most people don't study anthropology before they get to university. So you might be interested in the subject, but not have a very precise idea about exactly what anthropology is. So just to briefly say, anthropology is really about, at its most basic level, it's about exploring the human experience. And the reason we do that is to try to question some of our most basic assumptions about who we think we are and why we do what we do. Because wherever we are in the world, people have a tendency to think that the way that we do things and the way that we think are the right way to think about things, rather than just one way amongst several. And so by having this opportunity to study social and cultural life in a range of very different settings, we come to question some of our most basic assumptions about what it is to be human. We look at the very broad variety of how people live and compare different cultural ways of life with one another to see what we can learn from them. But at the same time as looking at all of that staggering diversity of the different ways that humans live, we also try to look for what is it amongst all of that diversity that brings us together. What is it that makes us human? And what is distinctive about the way that anthropologists approach that is that we do long-term research in the social settings that we're studying. So we go and live amongst the people who we are planning to write about. We participate in their daily life. We observe what they're doing, as well as talking to them about what they're doing. And through that sort of long-term, what we call ethnographic research in different societies, we get quite an in-depth idea of how the people live, trying to get at a sort of insider's point of view to those different societies. And all of our academics within the department conduct this kind of long-term ethnographic research in different societies. We have quite a broad range of within anthropology that we focus on. So questions of development and progress, we look at economic life, migration between different societies, religion, popular culture, and we also have had we have a long-standing focus on the anthropology of text. So how do written and oral texts get produced in particular social settings? And as well as that, as I mentioned before, if you study in our department, you also have access to interdisciplinary modules in what we call cognate disciplines. So disciplines which have some kind of overlap with anthropology, such as history, geography, literature, and art. Now, really, something we really put a focus on in terms of our approach to teaching anthropology is to make a really close link between research and teaching. And one way that we do that is that when you study anthropology here, quite a lot of the learning takes place through carrying out your own ethnographic research. So through actually doing what anthropologists do every day, doing participant observation, that's one way that you will learn about what anthropology is. The other half of that is, as I've mentioned, all of the academics in the department are practicing anthropologists, and we try to bring that sort of dynamic research practice into our teaching so that students get a really good idea of what it is that anthropologists actually do when they go out to do field research, and to try to connect what we're teaching to the very cutting edge of what anthropologists are doing right now. So to give you an example of one research project that we've got going on in the department at the moment, I'll say something briefly about my own work. I've been working in Angola for the past decade, and I'm interested in what the relationship is between masculinity and war in the southwestern African country of Angola. Now, Angola underwent a 27-year civil war from 1975 until 2002. And during that war, whole generations of men were forcibly recruited into one or other of the contending armies. And they were forced to fight in quite a brutal civil war for about 10 years. And then they returned to a society which they didn't really recognize anymore because the war had been so intense, it had changed it in so many ways. And I'm interested in what does this sort of generational experience that is specific to men, how does that change people's idea of what it means to be a man? And in particular, when people have witnessed so many acts that they consider immoral, in some cases they've been forced to participate in them, what does it do to people's ideas of what it means to be a good man and to live a good life? And I do that research not just in the sort of short time frame up to the end of a war, as you might read about in the media, but looking over the long term, how is it that wars reshape societies even 20 years, 30 years after the war is finished? And so through this research, it helps me to help students to understand how do you go about observing and analyzing a way of life? How do you get people to trust you when you're an outsider going into quite a difficult environment? How do you get people to talk about their past lives, and how do you, in terms of the analysis, try to link up those stories about the past with what you can see going on in the present? So that's just to give you an idea of some of the research that we're trying to link up to our teaching in the department. Now, in terms of the options that the options for different degree courses that we offer in the department, they're all joint honours options. And this is because we've found that by offering joint honours combinations, we allow students to develop a broader and more critical understanding of different societies. Bringing disciplines together can produce quite original and insightful research topics when students go out to do their own research. And we've also found that when people do joint honours degrees, they tend to get higher marks than people doing single honours degrees because they have a broader base of knowledge to draw on, and they're also challenged in more ways than single honours students are. Now, the joint honours programs that we offer are archaeology and anthropology, anthropology and African studies, anthropology and history, anthropology and classical literature and civilization, and anthropology and politics. And there's a particular structure to these degrees. So there are three main pillars that your degree will be built around. First of all, our degree program has a distinctive set of core modules that have been pre-selected in advance by us. And these are modules which try to ground you in the fundamentals of anthropology. So these are all the things that you need to know so that when you come out at the end of your degree, you can call yourself an anthropologist. The second major element of the degree is, as I mentioned, that you have to undertake an extended piece of independent research, usually in the form of a 10,000-word dissertation. So towards the end of your second year, you will start going out to do ethnographic research yourself. In your final year, you'll be writing that up into a piece of original research. Although if you want to, on some degree programs, you can choose to do a shorter 5,000-word independent study. And around this core, you can build your own specialisms amongst diverse topics. And these are mostly assessed by coursework in the form of essays or presentations or book reviews and so forth. So to give you an example of what the modules might be when you take anthropology, these do change slightly year on year, but here's a typical program that you would undertake when you come here. In year one, you would do some core modules in studying societies, which tries to give you some literature-based research skills and tell you how to write good essays. You'll have a module called Thinking Anthropologically, where you try to understand some core anthropological concepts. You'll have another core module called Anthropology and its regions, where you study anthropology all around the world and try to understand the different forms that it's taken in different regions of the world. And then there's a module called the Anthropology of Africa, where you get a specific idea of the anthropology of Africa. Only as 2 to 3. As I mentioned, that's so you'll have one period, which is a history of anthropological thought, and try to link those concepts to actually carrying out anthropological fieldwork, to ethnography as we call it. The second core module is called Research and Practice, and that's a module which is about the nuts and bolts of research methodology. So how do you go to observation, people, to focus group interviews, and so forth. And then there's a range of thematic modules which aren't based in any particular region. So they draw on different ethnographies from all around the world. And this just gives you an idea of things we cover, such as religion, the economy, politics, and so forth. And then, as I've mentioned, there are modules which you can take in cognate disciplines, such as geography, literature, art, and history. It's also worth saying that after year 2, you have the option of going to take a year abroad, so going to study in a university department in a different country around the world. If you manage to get at least a 2-1 in your first year, then you'll be invited to apply for the study abroad program. And the university has over 100 partners around the world where you can do a year studying anthropology in a different setting, which many students really enjoy and find a really enriching experience. Now, just to say something about the sort of dissertations that people end up doing. Some of these dissertations focus on some of the regions that anthropologists have classically gone to in the developing world. So, for example, a student recently did a study about sea nomads in Southeast Asia. Lots of students choose to do ethnographies closer to home. So one student recently did a project on masculinity and homelessness in the UK. We also turn anthropological research methods to quite unusual topics. So one student this year wrote her dissertation about Star Trek fandom, so taking anthropological theories of religion to analyze what goes on at Star Trek conventions. People also, as I mentioned, bring their joint honours degrees together in quite innovative ways. So one student recently wrote a dissertation about the relationship between spoken and written word in Homer from the classic side of their degree, and comparing that to South African praise poetry and contemporary slam poetry. And finally, it's worth saying that, of course, a lot of anthropologists work on digital lives, because obviously so much of our lives are now lived online. And so recently, one student did their dissertation on the creation of young women's social media identities. So that's just to give you an idea of the range of studies that you could end up carrying out if you come here. Now, beyond the academic side, we provide other kinds of support. So as I mentioned, we're quite a small department. It's a friendly department and a supportive department where people know your names, where lecturers are unusually available for you to come and see them whenever you need help. And as well as the support that you will receive from the lecturers on your courses, you'll also have a personal tutor who will meet with you once or twice a term to keep an eye on your progress, to help you to cope with any problems you're having, and just to make sure that you're generally doing okay. Now, if you come across any other more serious problems, then we have dedicated welfare tutors in the School of History and Culture who are specialists in counselling, so they can help you deal with any mental health problems. They can give you advice on accommodation problems and financial issues. So we really do try to produce a well-rounded programme of support, not just academic support. And the last thing I want to talk about quickly is what can you end up doing with your degree when you come out of the department? Now, in the University of Birmingham's most recent employability survey, very high proportions of DASA students were engaged in employment or further study. And in general, we have one of the highest employability rates in the UK for all of our degree courses here. And there's a really active University of Birmingham careers network, which will offer you specialised support which is tailored to your degree subject. They also offer regular individual consultations with the careers service to help you to pursue your own interests, and to try and support you to come up with a structured plan for when you come out of university, so that you're not going into the job market without knowing what you're doing. The Careers Network also has a range of paid internship opportunities, work experience opportunities. You can also choose to be mentored by former alumni of the university as well. And the destinations of our graduates vary quite a lot, as you can see from this list. Some people use the transferable skills which you get during our degree to go into professions such as bank management, teaching, retail management, for example. Others use the more specialised skills that you get to go, and people have gone to work for the Foreign Office, in non-governmental organisations in developing countries, gone into aid work. Some people have gone to work in the media on topics that are related to their degree. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for the moment. On this slide, there are some links to where you can get some more information from. You can get it from our website. You can get regular updated information from our Facebook pages, from our Twitter feed, or from our Instagram accounts. Right, thank you for listening to me. I'm going to hand you over to Amy, one of our